I'm Scott McCartney, class of 1982. I was a journalist for 40 years at the Associated Press and at the Wall Street Journal. And now I'm a podcaster and consultant in the aviation industry. I'm on the board of Duke Student Publishing Company and was co-chair for a number of years. And I'm an adjunct professor at Duke University. My experience at the Chronicle was life-changing. I found my career, I found lifelong friends, I found my future wife. I grew up at third floor flowers. So the big stories my year were Chancellor Ken Pye's retrenchment effort. We broke the story identifying all of the departments that he was targeting to cut. That was a huge story in the day. Maybe the most impactful story we did my year was a report card grading the football coach, who was Shirley Red Wilson. The sports department had every football player do a report card on the coach. They all did it. The coach graded out at C-, but what was really devastating were the comments that they had. The story was 100% on target, and the athletic department admitted that, but they begged us to hold it because it turned out the day we were planning to publish was the day that new recruits were going to be on campus. We decided we're journalists, we're not going to bow down to pressure. We went ahead and printed the story. The entire football team paraded up to third floor flowers and basically occupied the office and begged us to withhold it. I had a meeting in Tom Butter's office where the captain of the football team, who later played many years for the New England Patriots, I really thought, showed great restraint. I really thought he was going to hit me. and I had to take it for freedom of the press. Anyway, the football team ultimately won. We printed the story. They fanned out at all the distribution points at 5 a.m., took all the bundles of newspapers, threw them in dumpsters, and the recruits never saw the story. We reprinted the Red Wilson report card on Monday, and the coach was fired shortly thereafter. Steve Spurrier became the coach of the Blue Devils, and Duke football began to recover. What I learned from that was distribution is really important to a free press. I made amazing special connections at the Chronicle. Lifelong friends who I've stayed in touch with, both professional journalists, lawyers, others, just dear friends. Most of all, I found my wife at the Chronicle, Karen Blumenthal. Karen used to say that she found her two loves at third floor flowers, her career in journalism and her spouse. And I completely feel the same way. We started working together at the Chronicle, and we spent a lifetime working together in professional journalism. My biggest takeaway from my experience at the Chronicle is the importance of responsibility at a young age. We were running a newspaper. We had a circulation, we had a budget, we had a staff, both professional staff and volunteer staff. It was a large responsibility. People would get angry at what we wrote or what we weren't writing about. And that was a large responsibility. The administration held you accountable, the readers held you accountable. And I think it's important that young people have those kinds of experiences before they get out into the real world because it matures them. I think my time at the Chronicle really shaped the journalist I became because I was able to make mistakes at a young age, because I did have all that responsibility, because I had enormous freedom to do what I wanted to do. And with that came the notion that you had to be self-driven and you had to really work hard to get things done. And that carried over into my professional career. I think if I had to give advice to the student version of me back then, I would say seize the opportunity. I felt like I did quite a bit, probably could have done more. I saw my friends at the Chronicle doing more things, traveling around the world, doing in other internships, and really broadening their horizons. I recently got asked this question by a student in one of my classes, and I thought about it a little bit, and my immediate answer was go to more basketball games. I think if I was giving advice to the student that I was then, I would say definitely go to more basketball games. My hope for new and aspiring journalists is twofold. One is that they understand the importance of the truth. They understand the importance of accurate reporting, the importance of presenting news fairly and without bias. And it's just so important to every community and to the country. And I think you learn that on this campus, right? This is where it starts, and it's important Duke has a long history of producing journalists, and the Chronicle is a big part of that. And I think we do the country a great service by honoring that. My second hope for young journalists is that they figure out a better way to get people to pay for it. Because the financial situation for media organizations is so difficult right now. We need to find new ways to convince the public that it's important to support good journalistic work, and good journalism doesn't happen for free. So we need to find, just as the music industry had to find new ways to fund music and art, we have to find new ways to fund media. One of the things that I think is really important to understand is how important Duke has been in journalism. And it's really quite remarkable. There's no journalism school here. When I went to school here, there was one media course. There's now the DeWitt Wallace Media Center. There are a lot more courses. You can minor in journalism, but you can't major in it, and there's not a pre-professional school. I think that's hugely important. I think it's important for journalists to have a broad liberal arts education, to know something about history and political science and economics and science and whatever it might be. You can learn copy editing and reporting. But what's really extraordinary is the impact that Duke has had in national media. CNN, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, you name it. There are major figures at those media organizations who all came through Duke. Most of them came through the Chronicle, not all of them, but Duke has this legacy of importance in journalism, and I think the university should embrace that and should recognize how important that's been to Duke and the good media that Duke gets, or the media attention that Duke gets. But more than anything, I really think a lot of this traces back to Terry Sanford, who really felt an obligation to train smart people for government service, for philanthropic work, and for media. And he knew that it was important to democracy to have smart people at media organizations. And that has continued through the decades, and it's a really important part of Duke University. The Chronicle is far more important to Duke and to national journalism than anybody realizes.